Welcome to Your Mind is Trying to Kill You podcast. Join your host, Alexandros and co-host Vincent Byrne as they walk you through the deepest recesses of the mind and how it operates. They discuss all the reasons why our minds persistently get in the way of our evolution, growth, and our success. But crucially, they also teach you what you can do to change your destiny. And now, here's your host, Alexandros.
Well, hello and welcome to the 22nd episode of the Your Mind is Trying to Kill You podcast. I'm your host, Alexandros.
And I'm your co-host, Vincent Byrne.
And 22nd episode. Do you know what the number 22 corresponds to when it comes to the major arcana of the tarot deck, my friend?
No.
It's the Fool card.
Oh, okay. Is that the Fool as in the King Lear type Fool?
It's the Fool that is the kind of person that's actually so enthusiastic as a child that leaps forward without even thinking about, what he's doing. He's just all for it. Like there's no critical factor. It's like the child, right? It's like the critical factor holding them back. And of course, there are positives to this, and there are also negatives to this. And I think that this kind of, as I'm thinking right now, ties into what we're going to talk about today. You want to introduce the topic?
Yeah. So I suppose I've been because of the work I've been doing around my own business, I've come across a lot of people talking about the need to know your own story in order to be able to connect with people. Because in essence, we need to be able to tell our story in order for people to see who we really are. So there's that piece. And then there's also from, coaching and personal development, there's the understanding that needing to know what is the story that we are living into is hugely important if we want to change our behavior or change the kind of life outcome that we're looking for. So to knowing what the story is, realizing that we're living into it, and then realizing what we must change in order to go forward. So story has come up quite a lot. And I just thought, given what we've talked about before in all of the episodes up to now, that it would be a useful way to, a useful thing to get your perspective on it and to have a chat about how story works and how it impacts us.
Right. Well, first, we have to acknowledge the fact that everything that we are as a personality, like the personality is a narrative in and of itself, right? It is a whole bunch of, it's a role. The personality is a role. It's not who we are, right? It's not who we really are. But it's who we have chosen to be based on a number of factors and parameters. That's most of the time subconscious, on a subconscious level. Some of the time it's also conscious. So, but, we have to acknowledge that we are a story in the first place. And this is why I believe it is being told, the narrative about storytelling and how important it is in the business world. And when I say in the business world, I mean in the relationship world, because that's what business has end up, the modern side of business is building relationships. Now that sounds like a filthy kind of statement if you look at it from a certain point of view, but I'm not going to be judgmental on it. We're just going to examine how that works. So
Okay.
everything is a narrative. And we ourselves are also a narrative. We are a story. And depending on how deep someone wants to go when it comes to deconstructing themselves, who they are, in order to find out whether or not there are any parts that don't serve them, and then replace them with other parts, and so on and so forth. In order to do that, we have to first find out whether or not we are interested in completely either getting rid of the story, which has certain implications. I mean, if you totally get rid of your story and you're not some kind of like master spiritualist, master of yourself in some way, yogi or what have you, you might end up quite literally, I mean, you lose, which we refer to as losing your mind, going crazy. Because depending on how, like Carlos Castaneda had a way of dealing with that. Don Juan, his mentor, called that controlled folly, which means that I care for what's happening around me to the extent that it serves me for not losing my shit. But at the same time, I understand that it's all bullshit. It's nothing. It's just a story. It's just a fairy tale. It's not who we are. So what part do we want to start examining first?
You're asking me?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I think the natural thing is that when someone has a behavior or a set of circumstances going on in their life or their business, often what they want to do, or what certainly I've read about doing, is finding out what is the story that led to that particular set of circumstances or that particular behavior. Now, it's like, as we talked about before, it's what was the action, what was the event that gave rise to that programming that ultimately led to the story, which is that I believe this about myself and therefore I'm going to act into it. So I think people, for the most part, want to skirt around and kind of cherry pick the bits that they know about that are bad, and they want to do something about it. They want to find out what's behind it and then create a new story so that they're more empowered, let's say, when they go forward. So I think that's the kind of thing that I'm most familiar with, as distinct from, deleting the program completely and trying to build up something afresh.
Right, and that makes sense, of course. Now, like I said before, it all depends on how far you want to go. Most people are interested in, we talk about the entrepreneurial way of dealing with life quite often on this podcast. And this is what I'm trying to find out, what makes people tick. And then I use that, it's like reverse engineering a device. I use that to then put my own commands in it and make you buy my shit. So, there's no, let's not sugarcoat it. And there's no other way of looking at this if we're honest with ourselves, right? I'm not going to call that, because, everybody who's been told that as an entrepreneur is like, but what I'm doing is I'm helping people. I offer something that enhances their lives. and of course, yeah, sure, whatever you want to tell yourself is cool. Because there's no, ultimately, and if we're talking about esoteric knowledge, esoteric understanding, and finding your way through these thick woods of bullshit that our life is enveloped in, you might want to understand that all these stories are just stories, and what do stories do? They lull you to sleep, right? And this is what this is about. It's a big ass hypnotic bazaar that is been put in place a long time ago, and not only we have bowed down to it, we have worshipped it, but we have made it a form of art. People, we get fascinated by it to the point of creating more intricate stories and weaving this whole thing in ever winding circles. So, is that good or is that bad? What are we trying to do here? Are we trying to empower someone? Fine. How does someone get empowered? Ultimately, the ultimate empowerment is realizing, and of course, if you do that, I understand I have a habit of stopping mid-sentence. I apologize. Sometimes my mind is going, skipping ahead. Let me rewind. Ultimately, as far as I'm concerned, the whole idea is to find out that the whole deal is a story, right? It's a story. Story is what a fairy tale is just something that we tell ourselves to amuse ourselves, and that if we get down to last week, we talked about ayahuasca, right? And it's a perfect scenario to frame this sort of thing, because this is exactly what a shamanic medicine or even meditation, if you do this in order to get deep enough to find out what the hell is going on down the rabbit hole, you realize that the story doesn't matter. So when you realize that the story doesn't matter, you can now find yourself in a position of rearranging the parts of the story, and having fun with it, and this is the difference between those two mindsets, because they are mindsets. Is number one is like, let's say that you're like, I'm an artist, right? I'm an artist. These are the two kinds of artists that you might be. One is the kind of artist that, what, I dreamt this amazing, intricate, whatever thing, and I'm so excited to put it down, and I can't wait until I put it down, and what blah blah blah. And second type of artist is, well, I had that idea that will make me $1 million. I have to craft it and make sure that it's perfect enough and doesn't deviate from where it needs to be in order to be desirable enough for whatever, people to want to pay whatever amount in order to, acquire it. So the second kind of artist has been enveloping their mindset into a storyline and narrative that doesn't serve them. The reason why it doesn't serve them is because they are after a specific goal, and that's what they're all about. And in magical terms, that's called goal last, or something like that. Lasting after goals. And in the premise of needing to manifest something, and of course that works even if you're doing affirmations or anything, any sort of work like that, manifesting something that you are totally like desperate about is never going to happen. So that's a storyline that doesn't work for you if that's what you're looking for. Now, if you want to be the tortured artist type, which is another story, right? It's another narrative, it's another personality, it's another fairy tale, then you can embrace these kinds of stories that make you look and feel like that kind of person. But this is like method acting, you know what I mean? Like, you give, Jim Carrey his next role, and it's very intricate and it's very challenging, and now he has to become that person, and then he goes into great lengths into manifesting that storyline within himself for a certain period of time. And good luck with him getting rid of these stories, by the way. I mean, this is what makes master actors, I suppose, the fact that they're able to get rid of these storylines after they're done. Or do they? I don't know. Maybe that's why they're crazy. So this is, then it comes down, when it comes to, I'm thinking what you posed that initially as a question, is people don't want to deal with the stories that lead them to lives that feel that they're not happy, they're not fulfilling. And so they want to tweak the story to become another character that will make the journey more enjoyable or more rewarding. Am I correct?
Yeah, or that they want to be the same character, but they just want to tweak certain aspects of it in order to deliver what they want. So in business, it could be something as simple as someone who has a phobia or a dislike of picking up the phone and making sales calls.
Right.
And that will be because somewhere along the line they bought into the story that salespeople are evil and they just want to take money off you and rip you off and all that sort of stuff. So then when they're in that situation, pardon?
That's not true.
No. And then when it comes to the point where you are that entrepreneur and you have this great idea, but actually it requires you to pick up the phone and ask people would they like to invest in it or buy it or whatever, that all that stuff comes back to prevent you from doing it, or not being very successful, or you using all kind of avoidance to not make those calls. And as a result, you're not very successful. So they want to change the story, which is that I think salespeople are evil and chancers and all that sort of stuff, because I need to change that narrative so that I can comfortably behave like a salesperson and not feel like I'm evil and a chancer. So I think that's the way that people want to do it, and I think they're the bits they want to go around the edges and pick the pieces that are not working for them and then identify them and then get them fixed. So the new story is that I am good at sales. But I think the thing I suppose that struck me about it was that it is coming back to what we previously spoke about in terms of programming. The two are linked. And now that you say it's like the character that we have created for ourselves in this particular movie, which is a combination of loads of different factors. Some are good, some are bad, and we the ones that are bad, that are not serving us, we want to have them changed. So yeah, but then there's the other side, which is that where people are encouraging you to use your story to most likely talk about where you've come from and the challenges that you've overcome to get to this place, so that people will resonate with you and they'll see that they were that person back here as well, and therefore this solution that you have that you're trying to sell to them is one that they can see themselves stepping into as well.
Right. Okay. So first of all, when we're talking about the inability to be a good salesman, we have to consider the whys. So when someone says, well, I'm having difficulty, let's say I come to you and, hey, Vincent, I'm having difficulty making sales calls, man. It's just sales calls suck. To which you reply, why? Right? We go back to, if we really want to unwind this particular story, because that is a story in of itself, we need to go back to why. And of course, most people don't think in those terms. So initially they won't be able to, they don't know how to unravel this and go back to whatever it is, the initial program, the initial conditioning, right? So, but why? It's like, why do you, I mean, let's do it. You want to do that? Let's do it together. Okay, so you tell me, what's your problem, Vincent, my child?
Oh, I have a problem with making sales calls. I just, I don't like when people say no, and I just have a difficulty with that.
Why don't you like it when people say no?
I think it was because I always, did well, and I always, did a good job for people. And when I was in school, I did well. So typically when I went looking for something, people were fairly amenable to it. Nice guy, does his work. So yeah, we'll give him whatever he asks for. But then you come into this dog eat dog world, or a situation where you don't know if people want what you have to sell, and it's hard to not be sure that they're going to say yes, and even worse, to imagine that they will say no to your face.
Right, but that was very well done, but you psychoanalyzed yourself when I asked you a question. That's not what I asked you to do. I asked you why it is that, I mean, we have to start in very simple terms, right? Why is it that sales calls suck for you? What's the reason? Give me the reason. If the reason is not coming to you, I can offer a reason.
Well, the one reason that comes is that I've never been practiced at it. I've never been trained how to do it.
Right, but why? Let's go once again. Let's go back. Why? Okay, let's change the question.
Okay.
Why does being punched in the face, right, is not a likable situation for you?
Because it hurts.
Yes. Thank you. Exactly. So, did you see what
the rejection? So the sales call rejection is hurt as well.
That's right, because this is the bottom line of what it is that's going on here, right? If I call you up, hey, Vincent, do you want to? I have this vibrator that's fucking awesome. Do you want to buy it? You buy it, you get rid of, your lady will never bug you again, ever. And they're like, oh, fuck off. So what? So what happens? You know what I mean? To you, it's like your feelings are hurt, man. Because what I'm saying, what you're saying to me in response to my request is that you don't like me. That's what I'm hearing. Right? I'm a bad person, or I'm an asshole, or I'm just not a desirable person. You know what I mean? If that was a post on Facebook, you would dislike it, be angry, with tears,
Yeah, and what comes up there is that what it's doing is it's confirming all of the negativity that I would have felt about myself beforehand.
That's right. So all this is how, see, that is what ties into the conditioning, because there are some people that are naturally great salespeople. Why? Because they don't give a shit. They expect that you're going to say no. Yeah. Because when you say no, they get a hard on. They're like, oh, that's interesting. Let's dig a little deeper. Right? So it is the emotional response on your end that makes this be one thing or another thing. And so that is, of course, your programming. So now we have to go backpedal and go back to where that programming went bad for you when it comes to sales, right? Like did mommy or dad, like someone was calling, hi, we have a snake oil salesman, fuck you, boop. So there is all these kinds of ways that we tether our emotions and our subconscious responses to, according to what makes us feel more comfortable.
Mm.
So we, of course, as you know, we are creatures of comfort. So we chase comfort. So whatever doesn't feel comfortable, painful, right? We talked about that. We tend to want to avoid. We run away from pain. So what is it in this particular situation that is painful for you? This is the first question that we need to address, right? Going back to the story, the story says that, well, if I want to sell something, that means I'm a scumbag,
Yeah.
and I want to take your money, right? Or that means that I'm trying to trick you into buying something you don't need, or that means that I am like a trickster. I'm a lucky.
Well, if you take the story that you might have heard when you were growing up, it might have been that that's what salespeople were, that they were tricksters, they were chancers, they were, whatever, which then equated to they are untrustworthy, unlikable people. Therefore, fast forward it, and you're there looking at the phone, needing to make the call. And what's going on is, I need to make this call, but it's only unlikable, untrustworthy people who are going to make this call.
Right.
They're the only ones who are good at this, people who are charlatans, basically. So yes. that's what's ultimately behind it. And you not wanting to feel like that person or be described as one of those people, because you can imagine your parents saying it about you as much as they did about that other guy.
Right. Exactly. So what is it that you say to these people when they come to you with this problem? Usually
I work through with them what exactly they have a problem with, and I don't do it from the perspective that you would, in terms of, say, looking at the story and the mindset. Like, the level that I would do it would be quite sort of superficial and let's call it, I would try to get them into a practice, because as much as you can change someone's beliefs about something, you can also get them to move along by giving them a simple practice or simple series of steps that they can take, which doesn't necessarily remove the fear, but it could get them to a point of actually taking the action, which ultimately is what they want. It may not be a permanent solution, but it kind of gets by.
Right. Yes, of course. But it provides you with a new tool in your arsenal to want to examine why this is happening in the first place.
Mm.
And then, what I would do is ask someone, who are you? Like, if you were to describe yourself, like what kind of person you are, to someone else that doesn't know you, they're about to meet you, or let's say, let's say I want to introduce you to this girl that I think might be interested in you, and you would be interested in her, and I'm telling her a story about you. So Vincent is such and such and such person, trying to entice her into, of course, because I'm telling the story, right? So I'm embellishing on that story and making it as brilliant as possible and as desirable as possible. So who are you is then the question that I would ask. And it's a question I ask myself on a daily basis, as a matter of fact. Who are you? Who are you? And the ability, like, if someone needs to be a brilliant salesman, they need to be able to answer that question. If someone wants to be a brilliant anything, as far as I'm concerned, but since we're talking about sales now, you need to be able to address this question, right? It is, to me, out there, again, we're going to go back to the gurus and the Gary V's and so on and so forth now. it is my perspective that not no one, most people, especially most people that are tangled to the game of success in the way that is being defined nowadays, right? In Western society, at least, in any society, I suppose. These questions do not become important because, if you're like Grant Cardone or Gary Vee or any of those people, the only thing that matters to them is convincing themselves, brainwashing themselves that they are this or that thing. Hi, I don't give a shit about, give a shit about money. Money, yeah, poo poo. I just want to help people. That's what gets me off. But I mean, you hear that everywhere. But why? What the fuck does that even mean? Right? That's not even. But he has to say that to himself, because otherwise he won't be able to pull that trigger. He won't be able to just go out there and be as passionate about getting you to pay thousands of dollars to follow his shit in order to 10x. Do you understand?
Is that because he's likely to realize that what he's actually selling is rubbish, and that it's not worth the thousands of dollars that he's going to charge?
That's
is that it?
Yeah. Well, that's one aspect of it. It's a possibility, but primarily, what he's interested in, I don't say he, I mean what hypothetical. Let's not pin someone. It's a hypothetical. There's many of those figures out there, right? So, and again, we don't seek to shit talk here. We're trying to investigate something, and I'm analyzing a situation. We're analyzing a situation in the same way that I've analyzed myself, hundreds of times, and even on this podcast. Because if you don't get there for yourself, you won't be able to connect. You talked about connection in the beginning. Yeah, people seek to connect, but is that true? Do people this is one of the reasons why people are not able to play that entrepreneurial game properly, is because the connection is shallow. They're not seeking to connect. They're seeking to look like as if they connect. Now, let me tell you a story. When I was a kid, I had a German Shepherd. And once, that German Shepherd, I don't know what happened. Something bit that dog. I don't know what it was, but I just went to pet him, and he bit my hand off. And there I was sitting there with my hand in my other hand. And I was thinking, oh, what the fuck just happened? The idea here is that we need to get down to, in simple terms, to the story. What is the story here? Like, if I am X marketing guru, or X business guru, whatever. What is my basic story? What's my persona about? My persona has to be about, this is how I'm going to connect. Otherwise, I'm not going to connect, right? And if you examine, this is what you're going to find with all these people. All these people are trying to teach them, like, I'm not doing this for the money. Correct me if I'm wrong. Go out there and do the thing. Go to the initial video. The first time one of these people introduces themselves to you. Oh, I don't care about the money. Fuck the money. I have this deep yearning for helping people find their inner success. Yeah. I don't know.
But like, what's the difference? Like, where's the line crossed between someone who, as it were, tells their story? I grew up in this situation. I, took this turn. It took me in the wrong direction. And I took that turn. Now I finally got to here, and I can tell you about it as well. So if that actually happened, Obviously, they're doing it in order to make money, regardless of what they might say. But if you have someone who's genuine, who tells a story of their how they got from where they were to where they are now, and part of it is the purpose is to sell their product or their service, and are we saying that's okay? But if somebody says, well, I remember actually one of the gurus, he's an Irish guy, and he's in the States, and telling people that he grew up in this backward village in outside Dublin, and it was like there was donkeys and carts and this kind of stuff, and the village is one of the most modern places you could be, but it was part of the story. So you've got guys telling and embellishing and essentially lying in order to create this narrative that I came from rags and now I'm here and I'm changing the world, and you can change your life too if you follow me. So what we're saying is that those people are using false stories to a degree con people out of money, because they may actually have something to sell, which may be of value, versus people who tell their genuine actual story, who have something to sell. So
yes, well, this is my feeling about this. Look, we have, as a matter of fact, soon I'm going to talk about a specific a program that I have developed that leads a person down that rabbit hole in a series of series of steps that can take them to deconstruct what it is that they thought they were, in order to be able to then reconstruct themselves in a way that is proper for them. Now, this is you might say, yeah, it's a product. And the reason, what is the reason why I'm coming out with our product? There may be several reasons. One of which is, making money for something that I labored for and that I know can help people. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I believe, however, the bullshit part comes into the equation when I start over embellishing my story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like what you said before.
Yeah.
Because that means that I don't think what I have to offer is good enough. Now I have to make you drool over it and want to become an addict, like Picasso. Oh, here's Picasso. I just wiped my ass with this and signed it, and it's worth $100,000 because it's Picasso's shit. Do you understand what the difference is here? We're talking about the impetus to create slaves around you, to create people that are absolutely brainwashed and want to consume your spit, for holy water, versus taking something. Hey, here's a cucumber. It's organic, and I just picked it out of my garden. It's worth $1. Do you know what I mean? Like
but is there not the piece there though, in terms of you selling that cucumber, for example? The likelihood is that in order to be able to sell it, you are not just going to be able to show up with the cucumber or a basket of them or whatever and sell them for $1. You will need to tell the story of why it is that you are an organic farmer or vegetable grower, why you got into it. So the point is that story is a vehicle, and we're effectively saying is it can be used for good and it can be used for conning people as well.
Absolutely. I did not, I hope I didn't say anywhere that I'm opposed to the story. I'm an artist after all. I'm a storyteller.
No, it's just to understand it and how it comes together, because there's another part that to this particular issue, which is like I'm sure, Greek mythology is obviously one of the major sources of storytelling, which has carried down for centuries. And and all of those heroes and characters, found their way into, they became almost, they became godlike by virtue of the story as much as they were about the gods, but then you have a Norse version of it, and you have even Irish stuff about, fairies and all that sort of stuff as well. And I'm sure there are in so many different cultures. So we have this history of entertaining each other by telling stories. And we still do it in Ireland in lots of country pubs where people, go in and tell all kinds of weird and wonderful stories that they had. So, but now we have entertainment, whether it be coming from Hollywood, whether it be coming from CNN, whether it be coming from Sky News, whether we have it coming over the internet. We have people using stories to connect with us in order to influence us in some way or other. Because even if you go back and tell your genuine story about being that organic vegetable grower, the fact is, the reason you're doing it is to create some form of influence in order for people to know that you sell cucumbers and that you'd like them to buy them from you. It's not just giving information. You're looking to influence.
Yes, of course you're looking. Look, you can't. I'm not opposing the influence part, because there's nothing you can do to not influence. You influence people without saying nothing. You sit there with your mouth shut. You influence people with your energy, right? There's no way you won't be, because we're connected like that. But going back to that, you just said it. It's a form of influence. So should I not tell the story? No, that's not the point. The point is that the people that come to you and say, "Oh, I'm having problem with the sales." Why are they having problem with those sales? Because they have a perception of those salespeople out there, over embellishing, coming up with stories, making up stories, doing all this shit in order to trick people into buying something they don't need, or whatever the case is. So that's why, why would I, the idea here is to find a reason to connect with you, right? To find a reason to connect with you. And when you do that, then you get to enjoy the benefits of both the potential sales and making an actual connection, creating a connection. And that connection is all that we're about. We come into this world for this connection, right? We talked about that being a way to look into our destiny, the reason why we're here. Because the reason why we're here is not to sell shit and become millionaires. Let's just let's just face it here. On a level of base spirituality here, that's not the reason. And I don't have to, if I have to explain why that's not the reason, then we're fucked. But ultimately, the reason why people are having trouble becoming entrepreneurs or salespeople or selling something, or fuck selling, communicate. Hey, you go into you see someone at the bar and you don't know this person and you want to strike up a conversation, right? And people are like, "Oh no, I'm shy." So the reason why you're shy is because you have created a program. A program has been created within your subconscious mind that says that who I am is not good enough, is not genuine. No one would be interested in me. I have nothing to say.
Possibly coming as well from the story that if you've heard someone say that people who walk up to other people and try and chat them up at the bars, that they're sleeping people. Yeah, so it can come in from several angles.
Yes, of course.
And I mean, the issue of story and it as a device, and I'm just using the word device in just a very general context. But essentially, the construct of a story is one which causes us to be lulled into a sense of relaxation and comfort, which in turn allows the person who's telling the story, or allows the TV channel telling the story, or your best friend telling the story, to get beyond the critical factor, to get beyond that guard that is, will check rationality and everything else. A story kind of lulls us into a place of hypnosis, in effect.
That's right.
Which then, if someone wanted to, and not that people necessarily want to do it, but they want to lull you into being engaged, into being almost transfixed, in the way that people do when you're sitting around listening to someone telling an engaging story. So they don't have an agenda other than the fact that they're telling it. But when you have got an agenda, you're right in there. You can then start to use the story, or the element of the story, to start planting a message, or getting beyond someone's judgment, as it were, in order to get them to either buy a product or do what you want them to do.
Right.
Is that fair in terms of the device? Yeah.
And once again, there's the element of the agenda, right? So what is the agenda? And the dishonesty with which we engage ourselves on a daily basis, right, leads to a society that's full of it, because society is just a mirror of what we are.
Sure.
So if you came down, if you knocked on my door and I opened the door, and you're like, I want to tell you a story. Hi, neighbor. I just wanted to tell you a story. I'd be like, what's your agenda?
Yeah.
If I saw you coming down, half a mile driveway there into the woods to find me, I would probably greet you with a shotgun. I wouldn't. Yes, I would. You know what I mean? So we are tainted. We are in a predicament here because of the way that all these practices have taken advantage of people, in the same way that the animals, if you go somewhere where deer hunters go and annihilate an entire population of deer, it's unlikely that you'll see another deer going there, passing through the same path, because, these animals,
not stupid.
They understand. Yeah, exactly. So they're like, yeah, well, it smells like shit in here. That I'm not gonna go there. I'm not gonna lay down, make a tent where 10 people have pooped. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It makes sense. So first of all, let's just clear the air. Number one, if you just want to be a good businessman, a good salesman, and don't give a shit, yes, you try and find the most honest elements within yourself, and engage in them, with them, and express those outwardly. Like if you want to hypnotize people, that's what you do, right? This is what cult leaders do. This is what politicians do, by the way. What do? They try to pick certain things that would make them relatable.
So is it that, if you take politicians, for example, is it a case that the politician identifies characteristics in themselves that they want to put across, or is it that they identify characteristics in the people they want to engage with and speak to those characteristics, or is it a combination of both?
They do both.
Both, okay.
Yeah, it's a combination of both. They have to do that because, first they have to understand. They have to know what, as a good marketer, right? You have to know your market. You have to know who is your prospect, who's your potential client, right? So that's number one thing. So they find out, what do people like? Honesty. Okay, cool. I was honest once, when I was 12 years old. I can relate to that.
I have a story about that.
So you know what I mean. So there are certain politicians. I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
I think all politicians are.
They all do it. Yep.
That is an umbrella, right?
Yeah.
But there are certain people that have an extreme charisma and have had over the years, and people love them. Just whatever. Hi, I'm Bill Clinton. I did not have sexual relationship with that. And of course, he's just he believes that to be the case because he has to.
And but the interesting thing is that, like, when he was over here around about the time of the peace process and all of that, I met some people who, they were in a room with him, in large room, loads of people, and it was like someone it was almost on a different energy level walked into the room, and there was just, whether it was charisma or whatever it was, there was something emanating out, which kind of almost like some kind of deity had walked in the room, and even though he wasn't speaking to you, you just felt it. Absolutely. And some people have that, and some people don't. And clearly, it's part of who they believe they are.
And that's, yes, of course, and that's something you can also develop. Of course, is what a magician's ultimate goal is, right? So a cult leader, anyone who needs to command the consciousness of other people or other beings, even like a horse whisperer, right? This is what these people are about. That's what they do. So yes, if you don't care about bettering yourself, if you don't care about becoming tethered to your higher self more closely, if you don't give a shit about that, then, and you want the mechanics of it, that's the mechanics of it. Scan yourself and find anything relatable within you with the person that that you want to sell to, because that's what this is about. Hey, are you homeless? I feel your pain, and I was there too. Did you ever get to drink your own piss because there was no water around? Yes, I know how you feel.
I've drunk Budweiser too.
If you ate asparagus the day before. But you know what I mean? So it is, and that's the mechanics of it. But as a person who is constantly under the process of deconstructing myself and my own bullshit, right? Because this is what I care about the most. That's what my primary work is. And the reflection of what it is, that even this podcast, what we talk about here is not, as I'm sure you know yourself, what most people want to hear. No, because most people want to hear the stories. Most people want to hear, to be lulled to sleep. Most people want to be like, let me take you here as cushiony and as comfortably as I can from where you are right now, carry you onto a feather bed, and then sing to you until you're in dreamland. So, but that's that for unfortunately, most people, that's what they want.
But isn't there the people who go, and we've talked about it before, to, the Tony Robbins, 20,000 people in an arena kind of stuff, and, they want to be motivated and all that sort of stuff. Isn't I've never been, I just saw his Netflix thing, and it struck me that a lot of what he's doing is telling stories about how to get people hyped up. And it kind of reminded me of because I used to have an interest in mythology, Greek mythology, and Norse mythology when I was a kid. And my sense of it was that stories were told to people, you know, in order to get them hyped up before they went to battle, for example. And so it was a way of, and certainly that would have been the case in Ireland, you know, how such and such had taken out a whole, you know, battalion of English army officers or whatever. And you know, he became famous in the folklore, and fellows are writing songs about him as much as they were about telling the story. And the idea behind it was not just to eulogize him, it was to hype other guys up who are going to go and do the same. So you have stories being told to actually get people up, motivated, feeling like they've got something, as much as it is people wanting to be entertained and be, you know, coddled and put to sleep. So it's there's that aspect of it as well.
Of course, and motivate. You know, I'm all for motivation. We talked about motivation.
Yeah,
motivate. There was like Alexander the Great used to talk to his soldiers right before every battle,
yeah.
And he used to rile them up so much that he just couldn't hold them back. You know,
was it he who told the story about burning the ships? Was he the one who did that one?
I don't remember a specific story.
Yeah, you know the one I'm talking about, where they said that they burnt the ships so they couldn't go back.
Right. Yeah. So, look, most people want to be charismatic. Not everyone, I guess. Everyone will welcome it, but not everyone is after it. In the same fashion that people want to look fabulous and be beautiful and model life. So that they can have their Instagram account and be like, this is what I look like when I do this. And that's what I look like when I do this. You know, and people are like, you know, 150,000 hearts. So, once again, it goes back to the basic premise of what do you want? What do you really want? Do you want to find yourself? And then as an extension of finding yourself, you are able to connect, truly connect from the heart to people. And by virtue of having this connection, then you can positively influence this collective consciousness. Or do you just want to write it out? You know, it's like, do you want to write it out and be be a good salesman? You know,
just sell shit at any cost.
Yeah, because and this is, you know, if you let's compare that to something that most people can relate to, right? It's like a one night stand. You know, it's like me spending an hour long you know, story, blah blah blah, at the bar. Not anymore, of course. And not that I would ever do that, by the way. Let's just disclaim. In order to get someone to go to, you know, to go to bed with them that night, and then tomorrow's like, yeah, see you, I want to see you. It's this, and to me, this is the unfortunate reality of most people that want to sell others. It doesn't matter if your product is good, and I might want it. Right? That it doesn't matter. That's not the point. The point is, where are you in relation to connecting with me?
Yeah.
You know. And ultimately, you know, whether or not, and let's face it, usually it's not gonna, being honest with yourself to the degree that helps you, that helps your core, that helps your psyche, that helps your spirit, and that gets rid of all this bullshit conditioning, is probably not going to be a bestseller for you, unless you like write a book and everyone's like, oh my God, I could totally do it. I feel so. And I'm not saying all these stories are, you know, there are stories of people that have gone through extreme adversity, and then, of course, after they come on the other end of it, because you never get a book of the person who went to prison and got butt raped and hung himself. You know, you know, it's like, oh, he went through all this stuff and then went out there and became, you know, an apostle of helping kids in Africa, you know, whatever. So these are the, you know, the intricate motivational stories.
Yeah, the person always has to have got from whatever it was, living in a cardboard box on the side of the road, to you know, being the millionaire, and only that is seen and presented as, I got from there to there, you can too, from the point wherever along the spectrum you happen to be. But the main thing is that they're already the millionaire. You don't tend to get the book written by the guy who has got himself from the cardboard box and now he's in a steady 9 to 5 earning, you know, half decent salary. There's nothing exciting to tell about that, even though getting him from the cardboard box to the half decent salary job is actually quite an achievement. But it has to be, well, I'm running my own company and I'm making $1 million a year. That has to,
right. And I'm riding a Lamborghini. So that's exactly.
So the issue is integrity. What we're dealing with here is, it's a bit like owning a gun. You can either use it for good or you can use it for bad, and it depends on your integrity.
Right. Yes, it is a weapon. That's for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the ability, because what is it that we're talking about here? We're talking about the ability to persuade. Persuasion is one aspect of the educational business, models out there that sells the most, because that's the first thing that everyone that wants to sell something needs to find out how to do successfully. And of course, that's where this is where the story comes in, and that's why advertising it has grown so sophisticated as to just tell very heartfelt, you know, emotional, human stories to make as many people relate to them as possible. Because what happens when that happens? Your critical factor flies away and goes to Wendy's for a burger, and then what's remaining is a wide open subconscious that is like a 4-year-old child ready to accept anything you care to throw inside. You know, it's like a wishing well. You know, so story is hypnosis. Story is hypnosis. That's the language of the subconscious. Storytelling is hypnotic, just as any symbolic work is. You know, that's what art is. That's what music is. Anything that presents a metaphor, anything that presents a symbol, a symbolic act, and anything that is relatable and related to a story is a hypnotic process.
And so, given that we're on that, and that's what makes the world go round, what is your take on conspiracy theories and conspiracy theories in general, and how they're used and how they fit into our day-to-day narratives? What are they about?
I thought you'd never ask.
I had to work through the agenda.
Look, and given the fact that, you know, we joked about this before, you know, there are people that call me a conspiracy theorist, and of course, in full disclosure, I have been lulled by a lot of those story lines over the years, right? Why? Because it's well, there's two reasons why. Number one is because it's so freaking interesting. You know, because I mean, if you give me like a storyline from what history wrote down, you know what I mean, and it's all like cut and dry fucking bullshit. No, maybe facts, or you know, like dry pieces of information. History normally in the way it's being taught, doesn't involve a lot of dramatic storytelling. At least in the way that's being taught in schools. So someone comes and says, I had an experience with an extraterrestrial. I'm like, what? Tell me more. Are you kidding me? Of course I want to hear about this. What did he do? Probe you? Look, ultimately, this is what it comes down to. You want, as a person with a highly intense sense of imagination, because that's what any creative is, any artistic personality. I am drawn to storytelling as much as I'm drawn to relating it, to just delivering it. I'm also drawn to consuming it. So yes, of course, I will listen to it, and yes, of course, if it's appropriately put together, it will fascinate the hell out of me. Absolutely, guilty as charged. But ultimately, my goal is to find the truth, if such a thing exists, the truth about this world, the truth about who we are. And this is why we are having this podcast in the first place. This is why my journey, since I was very young, was all about that sort of thing. Who am I and what the hell am I doing here? I had that kind of nagging questioning happening within me on a daily basis. So I had to just walk down and try to find out what it, because I'm not the kind of person who is going to be like, shut up, and just because the teacher or the clergyman or whoever told you that this is how it is, and so fuck up and go do what you're asked to do. I'm not that kind of person. And that's another part of the personality that we talked about. This is my story. I'm not that kind of person, right? For better or for worse. Better, hopefully. So the conspiracy, any kind of conspiracy, which of course I'm not going to, we talk about conspiracy theorists right now, and most people, when they listen to something like that, they connected to the theory part. It's conspiracy. That means that it's most likely bullshit. That's not what I'm advocating. The fact that I'm drawn to so-called conspiracy theories does not mean that they're all bullshit, right? But at the same time, that means that it's a flavor, just like I like strawberry and you like whatever chocolate. So let's just say, because once again, my main reason for being alive is drilling deeper, as deep as I can, going down that rabbit hole and finding out, why is this presented to me, right? Why do everywhere I look, I see part of these stories that some of the people say, it's bullshit, and some of the people are like, holy shit, do something about it, because it's horrible, right? So, and the reason why it's so plentiful, because I'm also inclined to believe that the truth would not be plentiful out there if the agenda of whoever is ruling is to conceive me, right? So therefore, I am aware of the possibility, if not the probability, of the fact that the story that I'm biting onto is another form of bait, just like you use different kinds of bait to get different kinds of fish. Like, for example, a PC commercial, I wouldn't give a shit. Oh, here's the new IBM, blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, next, scroll. Scroll. Because, that's not the bait that I'm biting onto, man. But talk to me about the next Apple product. I'd be like, what did you do?
Yeah.
What? Yeah. It can make you coffee too? So I am perfectly aware of the fact that this could very well be me buying into a certain kind of flavor, and whoever it is that's pulling the strings of me being a puppet, because ultimately most of us, this is what they call it, they call us the masses, right? Masses, well, with the silent M, the asses. That's what we end up being, unfortunately, because we've been ruled by our passions. Someone, throws out a zinger, a catchphrase, right? How many times have we talked about that? And everyone loses their shit, one on the one side or on the other side, you know what I mean? So it's like, what is the phrase today? What is it like? What is it going to be today? What's the phrase that's going to set everyone on fire? So if you have any sense to understand what sets you off and what triggers you, you understand also that maybe all around the arena, you're being screwed with.
Yeah.
By someone who's only interested in attracting your attention long enough for you to be lulled to that specific dream or that specific dream. Be it like, oh, are you going to be the entrepreneur who, yes, you can do it. It doesn't matter if you're 75 years old, because what's his name? Colonel Sanders did it, right? He did it. And then 5 minutes later, after he was a billionaire, he dropped dead. It doesn't matter. You can do it too. Or, reptilians are out to just suck our energy and drain us dead. Or, Trump is just going to, turn the whole country into Hitler youth. Whatever your narrative is, man, we got to understand that we're dealing with a narrative here, brother. That's what it is. It's a narrative. And, is that narrative the truth? Who the hell knows? Right? But that's the idea. If you have any intelligence within you, and if that critical factor works at all, you should be able to detect that you yourself are not in a position to know if what you're being thrown, and you love that because that's your flavor, that's your favorite flavor, you're not in a position to know whether or not that's the truth.
Yeah. So
you can become more aware. Yeah.
But there's another element to that, which is that over the years there have been conspiracy theories which actually turned out to be true. Like if you look at the whole child abuse thing in the Catholic Church, people knew for years and years that was going on, and people talked about it quietly, and it did reach levels of awareness in society, but it was only a theory because they were holy and they didn't do things like that. So there are many situations in which stories, conspiracy theories, whatever, actually turned out to be true. And the difficulty, I suppose, is that when you lump everything into that one category, it becomes easy to dismiss it as, conspiracy theories are for the fruitcakes, when in fact there's the possibility that some of what people are talking about, it's not about trying to gain power. It may just be about raising awareness about child abuse, for example, and stories about what people are doing in places of power, around that. I mean, we've seen all the stuff around your man Epstein and how stuff started to emerge out of there. So I suppose the challenge that people have is about, and I think it's about all story, is about having the ability to separate and question, where is this person coming from? Where is this person coming from? Where is this person coming from? Why are they bringing this to the fore? Is this potentially true? Could this possibly happen? Rather than just diving in, as a lot of people do, and not just with conspiracy theories, but with any news, with any scenario, even the stuff about the virus at the moment. You've started to get people into the do you wear a mask or do you not wear a mask? And that's irresponsible if you don't, and all this kind of stuff. People taking sides because they have decided that they're on one or the other side. So there is this tendency naturally for us to dive in, as you said, into the flavor of ice cream that we are particularly attracted to, without actually really asking questions, which is, could this be true? Where's the evidence? Can I go and find some for myself? And all that sort of stuff that one needs to do if you don't want to be led by the nose over the edge of the cliff.
Exactly. That's exactly the point. Yeah. In other words, you accept, and I'm not saying, that actually I have a very recent example, right? So here's the thing. I was, me on the forefront, the whole pedophilia thing or whatever it is, the child abuse. Oh, are you kidding me? I'm like, it's like I'm the first person who's going to be on the forefront of fighting that thing. Yes, that's horrible. Let's get to it. That's one thing. And then I myself found myself falling in that same trap because there was somebody, because, there are those people that are on the forefront of bringing all this news, I don't know what they are, right, into their feed. And then everybody's like, oh my God, Tom Hanks, who is I don't know who he is, but here's, let me give you an interesting scenario. Not only now Tom Hanks, according to the storyline, is a pedophile, but they, for that reason, acquired Greek citizenship because they needed to just flee the country and go there. And by the way, parenthesis, Greece has created a law that says pedophilia is now a handicap, like being OCD, bipolar. I'm like, what the of course, why is it that alerted me? Because it's a domain that I happen to be very familiar with. I'm like, there's no way this was a law that created in Greece. Because if that were the case, everyone I know and my entire family, friend, I would know, because people would go up in arms. They would burn it all down. Right? That would be like the little bit that the Greek would need to make a whole thing like a Holocaust.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I see this thing and I'm like, no, wait. That's like, maybe there's a little bit of truth there. There is a bit of truth. There's a truth there. That means that Tom Hanks and his wife acquired, Greek citizenship. That's the true part, right? So if you manage to string together one truth, and that's, by the way, NLP through and through, my brother. NLP, that's how you do it. Right? We talked about that the other time when we were talking about how to self-hypnotize. Right? You start with something that all of you can, agree upon the fact that, this is a fact. I am sitting on this chair. And as I am sitting on this chair and my ass is touching the cushion and my hands are like this and I am breathing, I am also relaxing more and more and more. Because the subconscious doesn't have the discernment to know that if you give it 3 consecutive truths, the 4th one's going to be maybe. No. So it's going to bite into it, which is exactly what happens every time, by the way, we see a commercial or an ad that we're attracted to, right? It's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Have you been suffering from IBS all your life? Me too. But So someone says, by the way, Tom Hanks, we all know that he was like involved in my big fat Greek wedding, and it's like his wife is like Greek or whatever. They have had relationships with with Greece for a long time now. So if the fact that at this moment they managed to get a complimentary citizenship, has to be linked to the fact that they can't wait to get the F out because they're going to be, arrested and tried for the crimes against humanity. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know. I have no way of knowing, and you don't either. So, and the person, like a person who cites an article that says that this is so, and that was brilliant. I was very grateful for having experienced this, you see, because that gives me a taste of my own medicine for every other time that I was inclined to believe something because it was given to me in such and such article.
Yeah.
You see, so am I saying no, it's all bullshit? No, I'm not advocating that, but I'm saying let that thing that's called the critical factor that you possess and hopefully it is equipped enough to discern between what sounds like, oh, iffy, maybe, but maybe doesn't mean anything. I'll keep my eyes open, and my ears open. And if I see something else related to that, I will tend to explore it. Otherwise, I will put it, will file it under the possible bullshit, or possible truth. Who cares? It's the same thing. Does it make sense?
Yeah, and the thing is that the people who are creating this stuff, if it's true, if it's not true, whatever, they're obviously looking for something, as you said. And what you often see are people getting so drawn in and so far down the rabbit hole purely by virtue of, this supports this argument, this supports this argument, I've seen this documentary and that supports this, all this sort of stuff going on. And they are just getting more and more sucked out of being themselves, out of being standing in their own presence and their own power. Whereas actually the best way to, in my experience, to deal with this stuff in order to maintain your perspective is to work on yourself, is to keep coming back to, how do I stay empowered? How do I stay impartial here in order to be able to take a clear perspective and not get dragged down a rabbit hole, which has me on the internet 4 hours a day looking at all of this conspiracy stuff when I actually could be doing something to build myself up in such a way that if there is something going on, I can help do something about it.
Exactly. That's a brilliant point. Exactly. That and that's a great. How long have we been going on, by the way?
I think it's a long time. Yeah. That's the power of stories.
Oh man. So that's a great way to bring this to anchor it down to what it really all is about. It's about personal development. It's about this life. We talk about it every single time, right? Because there is, of course, what we do on this podcast is talk about personal development, because that's what the podcast is about. And personal development has a lot of flavors, right? So we attack as many of those as we can. So yes, anything that draws my attention for an unreasonable amount of time towards something that doesn't directly help me make myself better, make myself stronger, make myself more capable, more skilled, more human, more anything that serves me is something negative at the end of the day. Because, as one of my mentors has said to me, it's like, how does this serve you to know whether or not, reptilians are doing this, or the Greys are doing that, or the what do we call the other guys with the mantoids or whatever, the praying mantis? I mean, it's fascinating. But how the fuck does this help me develop myself in this present moment?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like if someone said, oh, if you go down in that cave, on that mountain, Mount Shasta, you will see them. And they're right there. They're chilling. They're playing chess. They're drinking ouzo. And then I'd be like, holy shit, I got to experience that. I have to meet them or not. They'll kill me. I don't know. But that, you know what I mean? That when we're dealing with something that can directly benefit my sense of reality being changed, altered in the way that it brings me closer to the reason why I chose to reincarnate on this planet, then if it doesn't, then I choose to move away from it. I'm aware of it. Yeah, I just heard it. I heard that. Thank you, David Icke.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. I can't wait to see someone shift into a reptile because that would be awesome. But until that happens, I have more important things to do.
Yeah, exactly. And then on a day-to-day basis, the other aspect of the learning is that to be aware that everything that we're engaging with is in one way or another a story. So whether it's in business, whether it's our personal lives, it's all a story. And the only way that we can maintain our power in this, as much as it is in relation to maintaining our power around the conspiracy theories, is that even when we're dealing with families, friends, businesses, etc., is that we need to be aware that it is all about people's stories. Some of them are trying to get stuff from us. Some of them are trying to sell things to us. Some of them are trying to influence us in one way or another. And the only way to engage and maintain our own power is to be in a position to say, what is that about? There is a story going on here. What is it about? Who is trying to benefit here? What is their agenda? Now, it's not that we need to go around all the time questioning everything as if we're some kind of, truth detective, but it's to be aware that when we start to get sucked into a situation, even if it's a very close personal one, that we should be in a position to say, have some way of stepping back and saying, what is going on here?
That's right, because otherwise you lose perspective. Right?
Yes.
Like they have that, you see that in movies, like where the character is like this detective or whatever, and now they tapped into a story that hits too close to home.
Yeah.
Like Liam Neeson, give me back my, whatever. It's like, I will find you and I will kill you, motherfather.
Yeah.
They have lost their shit because it's just,
they're
too close to it, right?
Yeah.
So I love it, man. Life is funny. But Vincent, my friend, once again, thank you so much for your brilliant demeanor and comments and questions and answers. And this has been another one that is close to my heart. So there it is, my friend. And as we always say, what do we say?
Let's be careful out there.
And don't let your mind kill you.
Thanks for listening to Your Mind is Trying to Kill You with Alexandros Megas and Vincent Byrne. If you like our show and want to make sure that you don't miss an episode, then we would love if you would subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on whatever platform you're listening to us on. And you'd be doing us a big favor if you would support us by leaving a review as well. It would also be great if you would take a screenshot of this episode on your smartphone and share it on social media. So join us next Wednesday when we talk more about mind hacking and taking back control of your life. Until then, have a great week.